Hello, my name is Lauren Lasnik, and this presentation will be on understanding and solving transphobia. Transphobia is discrimination or prejudice aimed at transgender people who identify as a gender other than the one typical of their sex assigned at birth. This year, the Human Rights Campaign issued its first ever state of emergency in response to rising discrimination and anti-LGBTQ legislation. Many of these bills specifically target trans people's rights to gender-affirming care, like hormone replacement therapy and puberty blockers, as well as preventing access to restrooms and locker rooms consistent with their gender identity. Clearly, this is an issue of grave importance, and psychological theories such as social identity theory, cognitive dissonance theory, and social cognitive theory can help us to understand and solve transphobia. 8% of trans adults report having already relocated due to such bills and discrimination, with another 43% considering relocating. I am one of those 43%. All of the information I've mentioned so far is information I knew going into this project because I feel a need for my own safety and the safety of my loved ones to stay informed. I've faced plenty of discrimination and hardship. I lost most everyone I knew when I transitioned for some time. I've been to a job interview where all the hiring manager wanted to do was talk about how I could decide to come in with a beard and mustache one day. On social media, I regularly get called crazy, confused, or a man. It's not uncommon for me to be dehumanized by being called it. But legislation that could deprive me of hormone replacement therapy or the basic right to safely use a restroom would force me from the only home I've ever known and all the people I love here. Legislation like that has already been applied for minors in my state, and it often feels like it's only a matter of time until it affects me too. Just in my own experiences in the workplace, I've been misgendered, seen me and my coworkers experience harassment, and had coworkers make comments about men using the women's restroom without even realizing I'm trans. When I learned about cognitive dissonance theory and social identity theory in my education, it helped me to understand how my own identities and beliefs I had been raised into caused conflict that led to internalized transphobia. I believe transphobia is motivated in others through a similar process of internal self-identity conflict, with the most prominent conflicting identities being religious, political, and gender identity. Religious fundamentalism and right-wing authoritarianism are associated with transphobia, but I doubt that is hardly shocking information. And for that and other reasons, I decided to explore the connection to gender identity. In a time of increased focus on trans people and our rights, a growing majority of Americans report believing that gender is determined by one's sex assigned at birth. Overlap exists with those who believe it is important to curb discrimination and use desired names and pronouns. Yet this belief conflicts with the validity of our identities and could lead to dating stigma or influence how one responds to a loved one coming out. Only some portions of the population have conflicting religions or political beliefs, but gender identity can influence anyone. According to social identity theory, people derive self-esteem from their social in-groups and motivate the maintenance of perceived differences between one's in-groups and out-groups as a result. Because 60% of Americans hold the belief that sex assigned at birth is an in-group, out-group distinguisher, transgender people could be seen as a threat to one's social in-group distinctiveness, and this could motivate transphobia. This hypothesis is further supported by a positive correlation between transphobia and measures of self-esteem derived from one's gender and more traditional restrictive views of gender. According to cognitive dissonance theory, people will adjust dissonant or conflicting beliefs to alleviate such cognitive conflict. If one believes that gender is determined by sex assigned at birth, that belief is dissonant or in conflict with the recognition of trans people as actually being the gender they identify with. Common transphobic stereotypes of trans people can be seen as consonant with the belief that gender is determined by sex assigned at birth and dissonant with the validity of our identities. This suggests the possibility that this cognitive conflict plays a substantial role in motivating transphobic belief. One primary way of tackling transphobia is by addressing how people learn about gender through observation of others. Only 11% of people know a trans person, and some recent legislation prevents many from learning about our existence in schools. Consider how your perceptions of a group might be influenced if your knowledge of them was considered inappropriate for you to learn about until adulthood. Transmedia contact and positive contact generally has been associated with less negative bias towards trans people. Access to and promotion of therapies that practice dissonance induction and reduction may alleviate current social harms. Greater use of deep canvassing tactics that involve door-to-door exploration of beliefs along with the sharing of interpersonal stories and motivations for beliefs can be beneficial advocacy that appeals to emotion while keeping dissonance low. When I started transitioning, I had already tried to come out as gay as a compromise to myself, and I was scarred by the experience. I felt unable to come out as trans and equally unable to continue living as a man. I felt like a burden, and I believed my family and friends would have been better off without me compared to if I transitioned. It was a very dark time, and I viewed starting hormone replacement therapy as probably just getting the experience of feeling what the right hormones for me would be like while I was still around. I got through this experience because I told myself some people have to do this now, while it's hard, to build a future where future generations of trans people don't have to face the kind of hardships I faced. That is the future these solutions can help foster. One where no one has to face the challenge of living a life for others or the guilt and social consequences of simply being yourself. Please research the policies the candidates in your area have on issues that are life and death for us and hold that responsibility in mind. Please promote positive advocacy and representation for trans people. Consider respectfully expressing why you disagree with others on these issues instead of causing them to react defensively. Do not let yourself become desensitized to hatred of us just because it is commonplace. Remember, trans rights are human rights.